Inside the Birds is back. What's up, everybody? It's Geoff Mosher and Adam Caplan. We have survived the long 3-day event known as the NFL Draft, and this is one of our most fun podcasts to do every year when we recap everything that goes on draft weekend. You call it weekend, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Adam, it's been really fun the last few years because obviously it's not just draft picks, it's trades. It's last year bringing in a guy like AJ Brown, this year
Sure.
it's a running back, DeAndre Swift, and then the whole Georgia Bulldogs angle. I mean, the Philadelphia Bulldogs. I know there's no direct flights from Athens to Philly, so that can't be an easy trip, right?
No, it's interesting. You know, 'cause one of my favorite parts about this is because you have Sunday, so we had 24 to 48 hours to start canvassing and asking personal sources and coaches around the league. Okay, what do you think of Philly? Of everything they did, fits, likes, don't likes, why Smith dropped to the end of the first round. We have more information on that. Yeah, again, that's the beauty of doing a post-draft review after you're able to absorb the draft and check around, as we learn a lot more. It's and then of course we follow that up with our friend Greg Cosell, our final intel with Greg Cosell, which we're looking forward to doing.
Absolutely. So big thanks, by the way, to Greg, who I thought did an excellent job with us, not only for our draft preview show, but also recapping the picks in round one. Big thanks to Andrew DeCecco, did an amazing job. I caught up on him and you doing the Saturday wrap-up. I thought it was fantastic. Really good stuff. And then a couple other people, Jimmy Hyden, our producer, who does an excellent job behind the scenes of putting it all together. Got to thank him. And Adam, the people that we do this for, the podcast, we had, I think, over 30,000 downloads between everything we've done since the start of Thursday morning, from the Thursday morning podcast that we did to all the live streams and all the podcast. We have everything up on the podcast platform. People really enjoyed it. And, I'm glad we got great feedback. And Sam Finkel, by the way, we haven't really mentioned him. He does a lot of great analytics studies and reports that we publish on InsideTheBirds.com. He did a really good analytics breakdown of the history of the 10th overall pick and the history of the 30th overall pick, who the Eagles have taken, and then the success rate, what positions most often get taken at those spots, and what the success rate is at those positions. It took him a long time, and he did an excellent job. And he has another analytics study coming out that is specifically related to DeAndre Swift. That'll be on InsideTheBirds.com either Monday or Tuesday. We're still working that out. So I just want to thank him for all his work too, because that stuff really presents an angle that you and I talk about analytics, but he shows the models, the predictive models, and explains how the predictive models work. He doesn't just give you the information saying this model predicts, which I think is really cool. So I wanted to thank Sam, and I think it's been, between him and Andrew and Greg and Jimmy Hyde and everybody, Josh, putting it all together. We just had a really awesome draft week last week. So
that was great. Yeah.
Everyone.
Yeah. Josh Weinfeld, our business manager, did a great job of tying everything together.
Yep.
I mean, yeah. And our YouTube page, which we've only had for about 2.5 years, has grown to, what are we, like 13,000, 12,000, whatever it is.
Yeah.
13, our pod group is way bigger than that. So we appreciate all the support. It's been overwhelming. And our ever-growing Patreon group, we continue to get people every day. One guy reached out to me. He said he just loved I guess, whatever promotion we've done. He said he was blown away by these interviews with the former personnel people, including TJ McCrate. So, boy, did that set us up well for the draft.
Yeah.
Well, although TJ loves, it's okay. He loves Will Levis. No, Levis dropped out of the first round, but doesn't mean he's wrong.
No. TJ nailed it when he said that the Eagles can never have enough pass rushers.
Yeah.
The first two picks, right?
He
just nailed it. He nailed it.
Yeah.
Right. Big thanks, as you mentioned, to Lee and Janet. They're our newest Patreon subscribers. You can subscribe at patreon.com/InsideTheBirds. And you can see the interview we did with TJ McCrate. You can see any interview that we've done and posted on the Patreon platform, along with all of our Ask ITB live streams. And we'll probably try to get one in pretty soon with the new month, since the draft is just wrapped up. So that'll be a fun one too. A reminder that Inside the Birds is powered, of course, by Ocean Casino Resort in Atlantic City. It's the exclusive Jersey Shore resort of Inside the Birds. And then one last programming note. is we have one more episode left with Greg for the Intel with Greg Cosell, where he wraps up and recaps the draft. That'll be up Wednesday morning on the YouTube and podcast platforms. That's always a really big one too. So people get excited about that. And Greg knows, pretty much everybody that the Eagles took, and he'll do a good job breaking down, why the Eagles took these players and where they kind of fit in.
For sure.
Sounds good. All right. So why don't we get started? Here's something that's fascinating about this draft. Adam, you and I knew that Howie would try to get more picks, or it's very common that he moves up and down. Who would have thought, though, that of the seven, they made 7 picks, right? Do I have that correct? 7?
Yeah, 7 plus the
7
trade.
Picks.
Yeah.
Right. Only one of those picks was in an original draft slot. That was Nolan Smith at 30th overall. It's not surprising, but yet it's still it never ceases to amaze me.
All right. So we need to have a contest. We'll maybe get it sponsored next year. Over under of original picks owned by the Eagles. We're going to do this every year. I've been thinking about. Then you brought this up because it's so funny. People, you see it on social media. Okay, how many picks will Howie trade away, or how many will we get? So of the original 6, they only made one of them, and that's the pick that you mentioned. But yet through trades, and then obviously they actually had 8 players, 7 drafted and 1 was Swift that they acquired from another team. So it's really remarkable. In fact, the other one I guess you should do, will they also acquire a player from another team in a trade? Because it's back-to-back years.
I love it. Maybe we can work with Ocean on getting them to sponsor a Inside the Birds prop bet next year at the draft that people can actually, bet, and we come up with the criteria like that. I think that would be a great idea.
Well, I don't know who does their book, but yeah, I mean, how great would that be?
Oh, I think it would be fantastic.
Well, they may have to limit it because the probability is almost certain that they'll barely hold any of their picks, of their own picks. But anyway.
That is true. But so I want to circle back to something that we had talked about on the podcast that dropped Thursday morning, the day of the draft, that I thought was really informative. We were having a discussion, and it wasn't something I was reporting or you and I were reporting. It was more something that just sort of educated guests, the feeling. And I remember saying, we had this conversation, that would Howie Roseman, knowing that he has 12 picks in 2000, around 12 picks, I think he's come out and said they expected that. Would he be more aggressive in this draft, knowing that he had a whole lot of picks next year? Aggressive in 2 ways. One, using draft picks to help him, future picks, which he clearly did, even in starting with this first pick when they traded a future 4th. But then also, might they do things a little out of the ordinary because they know they will have plenty of opportunities next year to continue to replenish the team? And I would say that the Jalen Carter pick is only a little bit out of the ordinary because they have not used a first round pick, first 2 rounds lately on guys who have quote unquote, maybe some character risks or things like that. They usually look for a very, very clean prospect. They even talk about their Red Star prospects and things like that. So, I'm not definitely saying that next year's haul led to that decision, but it certainly is a little bit of a deviation, and there has to be something behind that.
Maybe so. Well, no, what it does is when you have a lot of picks, it gives you what's called maneuverability. You could trade down. You could take picks from next year. They had so much maneuverability in how he used it. Look, there's a saying is there's no use in having a lot of picks unless you're going to use them, or if you keep trading down. Like for years, the joke with the Patriots was Bill's going to trade down. He doesn't want to make picks. He would keep doing it, trading picks away for future years' picks. It's eventually you have to use them. In fact, now Robert Kraft wasn't talking about that, but Robert Kraft's not been happy with Bill's drafts lately. He says they have to draft better. But you can do that when you've got this maneuverability with all these picks. Yeah, I that was a good point. Yeah, I think you nailed that one. Now the strangeness of next year is totally forgot about. Remember, they've got the Rager situation. They're going to get a pick for Rager. I believe it's going to be a 5th. They got the Bucks 5th on that trade on this draft day. Now the craziness and absurdity of that Saints trade that continues to pay dividends. they've got the Saints second rounder next year.
Yeah, second
On
round.
that
That's a big
trade.
pick right there. Yeah.
Ridiculous. What? I love when people say, I love these memes are hilarious. When people put on social media, when Howie calls run for the hills, it's like,
Mm-hmm.
how would you do that? What was the point? I guess get a first round pick last year, but the Eagles get a future one, which they use, and they got a future two. They were because they thought this draft would be better. Obviously, that's debatable, but the thing is, they were able to get Jalen Carter with it,
Right.
and they're projected to have 4 comp picks. They should get 4. It would be very surprising.
Mm-hmm.
One should be a third, and they have their first and their second and their sixth. But it's funny, most of the picks next year are not original picks. They're either going to be comps or picks they acquired in trades. There's that maneuverability again. They're going to have that ability to do that next year. And you know what the cool thing is?
What's that?
When the league 4 or 5 years ago, you were allowed to trade your comp picks. Remember, for decades, no, you can't do that. You're not allowed to. Now you can. That's huge.
Absolutely. All right, let's sort of analyze this draft based on what the Eagles we said their needs were and what they came out with. We talked about what is the number one need on the team, and we had an interesting discussion. Is it safety, which is the weakest area, or linebacker, or was it, I raised the idea of defensive tackle because it's the number one need for the team, the way they play football and what they, in order to, before you get to the linebacker safety, you've got to be firm up front. And we really, couldn't identify a legit starter on that line next to Fletcher Cox and Jordan Davis, who himself has some questions. So clearly they addressed what's arguably one of their biggest needs, certainly in their mind, with Jalen Carter. And then they got the safety in the third round, Sidney Brown, right? So 2 really glaring needs they were able to take care of. And right guard, I think, is fascinating now with the pick of Tyler Steen, because as Nick Sirianni said, Adam, you kind of got a nice, may the best man win competition here between Steen, Juergens, and Jack Driscoll.
There's a belief in league circles that if you're going to be weak anywhere, it would be guard. You never want to be weak, but if you're just going to ride the wave and just go with what you have, guard is the one you can kind of cover up. That's from personnel people. Again, nobody wants to be weak at a position, and we don't know how it's going to be. We don't know if Steen will win it, but he probably would be the favorite going in with Jeff Stoutland's tutelage, and they wouldn't have done it obviously without Stout's stamp of approval, and we'll see how it works out. But in the end, we had them for 1, 2, 3, 4, 8. Eight's debatable. You could say defensive end was a need. It was really more of a future need, not much of a need for this year, but certainly right guard, safety, D tackle, outside linebacker, inside linebacker, corner, and running back. I have to say they addressed all but inside linebacker, and honestly, we know their history. They just don't put resources into that position.
Right.
Most part, so you can live with it.
I also don't think that they're done per se, right? We talk about this all the time. We went through a bunch of names of street free agents at linebacker that were still fairly decent. There's going to be cut down day. And, like we talk about with CJ Gardner-Johnson, that didn't even happen until September of last year, right? I mean, a week before the season opener or something like crazy like that.
Yeah.
So
right week before cut down. It's insane. It's one of the strange stories. So here's you mentioned it. There are a lot of good inside linebackers. Now, these guys are going to get humbled to a certain extent because they were not signed before free agency. Now, they don't need, knowing the way the Eagles do business, some of these guys are just going to be out of the price range, but just to give you the idea, the best ones are out there. Zach Cunningham is a supreme run stopper.
Yep.
He was cut by the Titans making too much money. Damian Wilson is a tough physical guy, cut by the Panthers. Miles Jack, certainly on the downside of his career, cut by Pittsburgh, never lived up to the billing of being a first-round pick. Now they got some smaller guys, Jayon Brown, Rashad Evans, a guy that the Eagles liked years ago, Nick Kwiatkowski, Nick Vigil, who's a guy who could play inside linebacker in their odd man, their odd man defense. So yeah, there are a lot of guys out there. It's such a buyer's market right now at that position.
Yeah, and I would wager a guess that there'll probably be someone available by trade market. I'm not saying the Eagles are definitely going to, but I'm sure that market will be explored. It's not like Howie to give up a whole lot for a linebacker. We know that.
No, they could just sign a veteran street. They could wait till training camp. Doesn't matter.
Right. That's what I think is going to happen. I'd be very, very surprised if they didn't add to this linebacker group before the first game of the year. So,
yeah.
Other than that, And obviously they took care of the running back situation by trading for DeAndre Swift. So let's get into that because it's a fascinating trade, but it also raises some questions about where the Eagles are headed this year with their running back room. I mean, are they going to keep four? I guess. I don't know.
Oh,
But
for
they're
sure. For
yeah,
sure.
they're top.
Unless they're a bust, unless these guys are terrible in training camp, yeah, because they've got one, two, three, four. They got five guys they really like. We know Scott, barring something unforeseen, is going to be in the team. Gainwell, well, you're not going to be cut, but we'll get into the competition that he has. Penny, they really think a lot of. Sermon, they want to see more, as we I guess we talked about in November. This guy they're not going to cut in any circumstance. They want to take a look at him.
Right.
And Swift, I don't see Kenny Brooks be on the team at all this fall. There's just no way. I don't see any circumstance that he could be on the team.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it would be hard to see any way that they won't have four. That someone would have to be hurt, waived, injured, or something like that, or just these guys don't look good in training camp, which is always possible. But on paper, yeah, four would make the most sense.
Four would make sense with three active on game day, though. I don't know if they're going to have four.
Sure.
So I feel like Boston Scott is pretty safe because he's a kick returner and he's a great number 3 running back for this team to have. And then, in my mind, I feel like Gainwell should be on the team because he's still into he'll be 3 years into a rookie deal. He has played well. It's not like he got off to a slow start, but he certainly was their preferred running back in critical situations by the end of last year when they're going to the Super Bowl, right? He catches the ball well, but now you do add DeAndre Swift to the mix, and DeAndre is also a running back who can catch the ball fairly well too. I wouldn't really call them the same type of guy, but he can catch. I don't know if to me it sort of creates this strange 3-for-1 competition. Well, it's not a competition. DeAndre Swift's on the team. They traded for him. He's on the team. So what do you do with Penny and Swift right now? Those two guys. I mean, Penny and Sermon basically have to prove that they can beat out Gainwell.
Well, they're going to be a spread. The Eagles are going to be. They're going to be a heavy 11 personnel. That Swift is tremendous. Talking about our line source said that yes, there was some frustration with his injury history, and everybody wanted to move on. But he is really good because they were a spread offense. This is not what they thought they'd be when Dan Campbell came in, but Geoff handled himself well. The receiver core was a little bit better than they expected, and they were more of a spread offense. And obviously, the Eagles saw him in week 1 where he did very well. And what we're told, he's got a nose for the goal line. He is coachable. We know about the injury history. He's missed 10 games. He is just not as physical as he should be. Now, he's not tall, but he's built. He's compact. He's 215 range, 212, but he just doesn't play up to it. And they got frustrated with him, and he more or less was going to lose his job, even if they didn't draft Gibbs. They brought in Dave Montgomery to be their primary back, paying him $6 million a year. So he already lost his starting job, and they made a decision they're going to move on from him. And give the Eagles credit, the Lions were shopping him. The Lions wanted a draft pick for next year. They didn't get that. The Eagles they got a good compromise in getting a 4 for 25. So there you go. Swift is no offense to Gainwell. Swift's a much better football player. It's not close.
Oh
Swift
yeah, no, really I know
good.
that. So
yeah,
so it just feels like Gainwell's not going to be someone they cut, right? I mean,
no,
I don't know.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So I mean, we'll do pretty soon from now, maybe even this coming week or next week. We'll do our sort of depth chart podcast, and then maybe a 53-man roster prediction podcast. But this right now, to me, it means Swift, Gainwell, and Boston Scott are definitely there. That's 3. So who's your 4th? Is it going to be Penny?
Penny. Yeah. Sermon? Oh, yeah, for sure.
So so Sermon's now odd man. You think Sermon's out?
Well, again, we're going to take these guys to training camp and let the best man win because you need at least 5 backs for training camp.
Right.
Injury, dehydration.
Yep.
Preseason games, you kind of have to have 5 backs. So yeah, I mean, Penny. Here's what Penny has. He's the only home run hitter they have at running back. He is got juice like you can't believe. If he's healthy, if his legs are 100%, this kid's got. There's a reason why the Eagles brought him in here. He's unlike anyone they have.
Right.
So, and then Sermon's more of he doesn't always play with the power that he should have with that big body, but it's reminiscent of 2017. There's no doubt with that committee, but I would argue this group's kind of more talented.
I think
Right?
it's pretty
Could be.
fascinating that when they lost Miles Sanders, it was like, man, this running back room has some question. I mean, you could say what you want about Miles Sanders having question marks, but he at least gave you a baseline level of production that was really good when he was on the field. And then all of a sudden, it's not even like a month and a half later, and we're like, geez, who's going to make this running? Because now they've got some pretty good talent at it from top to bottom. Just obviously Penny's injury history factors in greatly, but from the talent standpoint, the guy has the highest yards per carry average in the league for the last 4 or 5 years. So really interesting. I mean, you can't complain about this. This is really a well-rounded running back room here. And don't forget about Jalen Hurts' ability to help the running game.
There you go. There's the other part of this. So think about this. If you put Hurts and Penny on the field, right? Running read option. With Penny's ability, if they toss it right, because the big thing is getting Penny outside the tackles and getting upfield, where he's incredible. He's got unbelievable juice for a guy his size. Yeah, look, and Swift is amazing catching the football. He's got great vision, great hands.
He killed the Eagles in week 1, man, wasn't? Didn't he?
Crushed them.
He just crushed them. Yeah.
Didn't he have that big play?
Yeah, he had like a 60-something yard, I think, touchdown run in the first 10 plays of the game, I think. Yeah.
So, look, it's the one issue you have before we move on here. Swift's injury history, Penny's injury history in particular, significant.
Yep.
Sermon's proven nothing in the NFL. Boston Scott has got his little role. You and DeCecco love this stuff. It's Andrew mentioned as you did in the fall. The randomness of Boston Scott's role. Who the hell knows from week to week unless it's against the Giants? What he could be an actor. Or
honestly, I think they just spin a wheel. Sometimes they just spin a wheel when they make the game plan. It's got numbers on it, funny. Like 1 through 20. Oh, 15. All right, 15th snap of the game. We get the ball to Boston Scott.
Who knows? But now the great thing about this group, last point here, is matchup specific. Coaches love being matchup specific. If they've got a matchup where the linebackers are slow, you could see Gainwell and Swift being major factors in the pass game. If they need a lot of inside running, or a game where they think they're going to run the ball a lot with Hurts and maybe Penny and maybe one other guy, they've got that ability. I mean, this is I like the way you set this up. This is fascinating. I just you worry about the injury history of the two guys, but they got so many backs. Maybe it won't be a problem.
Maybe it won't. We will see. Well, definitely something we're going to talk about a lot going on future podcasts.
Sure.
Let's get to the draft picks. Before we do that, I do want to remind everybody that it's Ocean Casino Resort's 5th birthday this summer. They can't wait to celebrate with you. Join Ocean for exciting promotions and sweepstakes, headline entertainment, the best day life and nightlife lineup in AC, the debut of the birthday bar, exclusive local collabs and partnerships, commemorative 5th birthday merchandise, and so much more. Don't miss stunning fireworks and unique events all summer long. Ocean Rewards members will enjoy over $5 million in gifts and prizes, so be sure to sign up for an Ocean Rewards card to get in on the fun the next time you visit. All right. We are not yet going to cover the undrafted free agent class. We'll save that for Thursday's show. All the announcements should be at least officialized by then. And there's a bunch of names, so we'll get into that later.
Hey, well, you know why we wait, folks, because it happens every year. One or two of these guys are the agency puts it out on Twitter or it's reported, and then it doesn't wind up happening. We got kind of frustrated with these guys backing out. It happens. Every team has this problem. It's because what happens is, can't say this is an Eagles issue only. It happens to all teams. So sometimes they go over their allotment, teams do, of how much signing bonus and whatever the case may be. Sometimes these things just don't happen. So we'll wait till Thursday's show.
No doubt about it. And it's also a reminder that at this time last year, we spent entirely too much time talking about Carson Strong.
Oh, man. Everybody was excited. Yeah.
Hey, I mean, it's not like we knew it, but, in retrospect, it's like, man, we really talked about that guy for quite a bit for someone who didn't even make the team.
He's in the USFL now, believe it or not.
That is right. But he's not a starter, correct?
I watched 5 minutes. I watched our friend John D. Filippo coach, I think he's 3-0 now. But one of the games that they were in, he came in and he got sacked. He never saw the rush. I was like, oh man, he got flattened like a pancake. Uh-oh.
Crazy. All right. Well, let's talk about the picks. Round one, pick number 9, Jalen Carter. So we definitely said on the Thursday morning podcast, this is a guy who they were comfortable with. At least he was on the board. We knew he was not removed from their board. We also said he was probably not going to make it to 10, and he didn't. He technically did not because the Eagles had to trade up
Good call.
to 9.
You're right.
To get
You're
him.
right.
So, man, we were really on the money with that one. That one.
I just Seattle didn't want him. They were the biggest need, and it wasn't even closest defensive tackle. They just weren't comfortable with it. I hate that term comfortable. I just think like the Eagles have an infrastructure with Paul Lancaster, the director of player programs, and the way that they handle players, and that they have every NFL team pretty much gets the same information from NFL security. The Eagles have obviously Dom DeSandro, everybody knows. What's funny about Dom, like Howie doesn't even hide it anymore in these press conferences. He's mentioned Dom a lot because he's been written about a lot. So I get that. Dom's phenomenal. And they dig. And they also have a relationship with the University of Georgia and the football program. Glenn Schumann had a legit interview. He was the guy they wanted to talk to. They knew him. He did interview for the defensive coordinator job, but I just got the sense they really wanted someone with NFL experience. But look, he interviewed. They know him, and he's a pretty talented coach. And they have access to, as all teams do, these coaches and football operations people there, and they felt that they could handle this player. And
Right.
There's some challenges here, man. There's it's not just the one off the field incident. There's some challenges with this player.
Yeah, the Eagles clearly took a risk. When Howie comes out and says we have Dom DeSandro, who gave us all the information that we needed, and the Eagles didn't shy away from it. They obviously took some offense to the way Reuben Frank worded a question, and Reuben was on Twitter saying maybe he should have phrased it better as far as accountability. But the Eagles did not shy away from talking about the car collision and everything. But there's more information. So when Howie mentions Dom, got us everything we need, that's not Howie Roseman saying Dom gave us information that was glowing or more positive than other teams got. It just meant that they were very aware of the situation. And what they did was they took a calculated risk. I mean, there's no other way around it. Nothing that you hear is made up. I mean, it's true. Like, I've talked to people myself. I'm sure you have. There was some concern with not that he's a bad guy, by the way, just sort of like, every day, is he going to, where on your coaching staff? Is he coachable? There were just lots of different questions around him from things that happened in his past that aren't even part of the car collision. Or the car racing incident. So they took a calculated risk. Like I mentioned at the top of the show, that's not something they ordinarily do. Maybe as you mentioned, I think you make a great point. I think infrastructure that they have in place, guys like Brandon Graham and Jason Kelsey and the Georgia teammates. And I think we did mention this on the Thursday podcast, though he and Jordan Davis are really close. Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis are really close. So maybe being around, guys again that he's close with and familiar with help. And I think the locker room is well policed. We can go back to sort of a Jay Ajayi coming in, or like Garrett Blunt or other guys in the past who have come in with something in their history that made you concerned. And for the most part, it has worked out for this team.
Yeah, had this been 2020 after Doug got fired, I don't know if they do this.
Agreed.
Only because the team was in disarray.
Yep.
You have the immaturity of the receiver room. Just the group of players need to be improved. And obviously, Howie's done a makeover this team. They retooled. They didn't rebuild, but they retooled in a very short period of time, which is remarkable. But yeah, from our scouting sources we got over the weekend, yeah, there's some challenges with him. He's had some run-ins with his teammates over the years. I think that might be what you're alluding to. And I think I'll give Mike Florio from Pro Football Talk credit. He has some similar information that we have. He's not the easiest guy to deal with sometimes over the years, going back to high school, we're told. But again, all 32 teams know this stuff. It's not anything we're discovering stuff that no one knows. They all know this stuff. That's what we got from other teams. So here's a good thing, though. He's not a partier. He doesn't really go out from our scouting sources.
Right.
That I like hearing that, because if it's a kid who's immature, needs to grow up, is he partying? No, he's not doing that. But if he's had some run-ins with some teammates, which is not a first in the National Football League, it happens all the time. And whatever that entails, it's just a matter of awareness. And as you said, with BG and Lane and Cox and Hassan Reddick and all the leaders and Slay and Bradbury, it's crazy, the leadership thing. And look at all these guys have come on in the last couple of years. Dickerson, Jordan Mailata, Lane Johnson, as you said, Jalen Hurts. All these high character guys. It was not always like this with the Eagles. It's I know we talked about this years ago. I wonder if this was purposeful. And AJ Brown, another great one, and Devontae Smith.
Yeah.
Yep. The list goes on and on. I wonder if this is purposeful for Howie when he looked at how bad things were during the 20 season.
As far as having great locker room guys?
Yeah. I mean, some of these guys were here, obviously, and some were not. It's just, and Josh Sweat is a high character guy. I mean, this goes on and on and on. I just wonder if he felt like, man, what is going on here? And you add all these other guys, and the seriousness of Devontae Smith and Landon Dickerson coming from the Alabama program, which quite frankly, they should have done for years. I don't know why the strangest enough, I know they said they tried some years and couldn't get them, Alabama players, but man, you get these Georgia players and Alabama players, you're going to have a better locker room.
Yeah, you would think so. Yeah, and like you're alluding to, it's not going to be 100%, but if you get enough of them, you're going to wind up reaping more benefits than risks. I would think there. And they sort of went right back to form with their almost the rest of their draft. Their second first round pick, we'll get into now, Nolan Smith, is about as high character leader. I mean, the scouting report on him just as a teammate couldn't be better. And I think if you saw his opening press conference that he did alongside Jalen Carter, it showed immediately. I mean, he defended Jalen Carter, said, I know him well. It's what you hear is not what he is. That's fine. I mean, he's supposed to do that as a teammate. I generally do think that they enjoy each other's company. And in general, I think you just saw right off the bat, Nolan Smith just being very comfortable in the surroundings, laughing, talking about how he dunked or he beat Sirianni in horse and things like that. So I tell you what, people I think, Adam, are more excited about the Nolan Smith pick than the Jalen Carter pick. You know,
really?
I started to go through some of the podcast numbers and the YouTube numbers, and maybe this is just coincidental and not to be read into, but our live stream recap that we did on Nolan Smith has almost like 1,000 or 1,500 more views than the one on Jalen Carter. Wow. And even in the podcast form, there's more listens on that one than the one on Jalen Carter or anybody else.
And remember, it came out later because that pick was made closer to midnight. Yeah, wow, that's interesting. Okay. So when you look at this Nolan Smith pick, oh, by the way, he worked out at the combine as a D lineman, though he's going to, everybody we talked to said he's not playing with his hand down very much.
Yeah.
He's smaller, but super high character, productive, 6'2 and a quarter, 238 at the combine, 32 5/8 arms, which is good. That's good arm length for an outside linebacker. The 4.39, I know it doesn't matter much because it just means straight line speed, but his 10-yard split is 1.52, which is great. The vert 41.5 is ridiculous. Broad jump 10.8, you love it. High character, productive. He dropped, we're told, due to the torn pectoral muscle from last season. So I always say this: the guy's a first-round pick. You've got 4 years and a fifth-year option. Why would that matter? You're not drafting for 1 year, then trading him. It's so dumb.
Yeah.
Although I don't understand.
Yeah, I mean, some of the people I spoke to prior to the draft, and we talked about this that Thursday morning, didn't feel like the pectoral injury was why he's all over the map. Some people I talked to a team that runs a 3-4 and would use normally an outside rusher. They liked him a lot, but they just felt that for them he was a sort of late one player. Not when I was asking this person about the Eagles maybe taking him at 10, they thought that was too rich for him and teams are going to view him differently because he's big time with a projection because he's at a rare sort of weight for his size. He's only he's 238 pounds. Even though the tape, as Greg Cosell has told us and others have the tape shows he plays physical. It's not that. It's just that all this athletic testing and measurements, like he projects to be someone who could literally be like a Hassan Reddick or even a Micah Parsons type player, but that's not exactly what you see on tape all the time at Georgia. You don't jump out and go, oh, wow, he's like Micah Parsons. I mean, he's a Hall of Famer waiting to happen or a multi-time Pro Bowler. He's a really good player, but we know how much the Eagles, Adam, put into athletic testing, character, things like that to make
Yeah.
a projection. So that's why I'm saying he was all over. Different teams had him graded differently, just depending on what they saw from the tape and how they viewed him for 2 or 3 years down the road.
Yeah, it was actually the term that I used when we did our past our with Andrews. He dropped for two reasons: the pectoral injury, and the big one is he's a tweener because he's not 245 to 250. What I find comical is he's taller, and Reddick's not 250. He might be around 235 to 240.
Mm-hmm.
And Reddick was a first round pick. Now Reddick had an unbelievable Senior Bowl that put him that. It's rare that a guy will move up that much for a great Senior Bowl, but he really did. And of course the Cardinals screwed it up. They had no idea what to do with him when they drafted him. So stupid.
Yeah.
But anyway, the Panthers figured it out, and so have the Eagles. So now the thing is though, he'll play Sam. He should back up Reddick, and then we'll see how they do it because they're an odd man front again, as we understand it. They'll do 34. They'll do their 5-1. They'll do their 5-2. They'll do some 4-3 because the tape showed it last year. They ran a 4-3 sometimes, not a high percentage. But again, because he's not big enough physically yet in terms of weight. Like Micah Parsons, folks, is huge. You got to see this guy up close. He's 250, and he's a big dude. But this guy has got a motor. He's fast. It's just a matter of how you're going to line him up and figuring it out as you go along. As he gets older and hopefully he gets to 245, 247. That's something they'll have to figure out by their strength and conditioning staff, how big he can get.
Yeah. Well, I think there'll be a time during the season, right, where it'll be like 3rd and 8 and you're really not afraid of the opponent running on you if you're light. Yeah. And you might see Reddick over left tackle, Smith over right tackle, Sweat maybe kicked inside next to Fletcher Cox or Brandon Graham. I mean, you're going to be able to put two really, as long as these guys actually live up to the billing, right? That you got some line 1 and line 2, and they're going to be raring to go because, I mean, Jalen Carter is also going to be on the field in pass rushing situations. I mentioned Brandon Graham. I mean, I guess technically right now, Derek Barnett is still on the roster, isn't he?
He is. He's going to be. No,
yeah.
My understanding is he's going to be an excess defensive end. Like he'll give them, if he looks okay in training camp, you have 15 to 20 snaps a game. He plays the run.
Right.
He'll be an end, and he could also stand up if they need him to. But yeah, they got a whole. You're right. They have this ability to go their own NASCAR, different NASCAR package, and then just put a lot of pass rushers on the field.
Mm-hmm.
Man, this is Andrew mentioned this on our show on Saturday night after the draft concluded, because we didn't know going to free agency what this would look like. We knew we'd heard Barnett would be on the roster, but what could he offer at this point? We'll learn more in the offseason program. We know Jordan Davis is not a pass rusher, and we know about Sweat. We know about BG at 35, another year, but he still looks good.
Mm-hmm.
And then of course Reddick, and then you add Barnett back now. BG, Cox, Sweat, Reddick, Nolan Smith. And another thing is they really want to take a look at Janoris Robinson, who they signed off the Vikings practice squad last year. He had that injury.
That's right.
It's another guy because he's super long, and that's another guy's got some gifts. And then another thing is, one more thing I should have mentioned, with Nakobe Dean expected to start. Remember how good of a blitzer he was?
Yeah.
There's another one for you. If they go
5-1, going to have some nice little weapons at his disposal. Yeah. And Greg Cosello said maybe the Eagles will try to audition Nolan Smith a little bit as a stack linebacker in certain situations. I don't know. We'll have to see what they have in mind for him in that situation. But again, maybe he does, but only as a blitzer. We'll see. Let's move on to the 3rd round picks. We know the Eagles did not have a pick in this. Well, they traded out of the 2nd round. So we'll get to the 3rd round picks in a second. Just want to pause real quick for a word from our great sponsors. Okay, round 3, Adam, an offensive lineman and ... safety. The Eagles picked a safety before day 3. It's amazing. The offensive lineman, Tyler Steen, was a left tackle at Alabama this past year, but he played both left tackle and right tackle at Vanderbilt before he went to Alabama, but the Eagles see him as a guard. Why do they see him as a guard, Adam?
Well, when you're 6'6" and your arm length is 233 inches, you're not playing. You're just not playing left tackle the next level, which is the NFL. You're just not. So our offensive line source who's really good. He's the best that I've ever talked to. He goes, look, he's a guard. He goes, Philly and Stoutland might try him a little bit at left tackle, in a pinch, but he's a good enough athlete that you could get him through a couple games for a stretch out of a game at tackle, but he's a guard. He just won't be able to play at our level full time at tackle. So, okay. So that's kind of what we expected. Now, as you said earlier, it'll be Jurgens, Steen, and Driscoll competing for that right guard job. And look, there's nothing wrong with competition. My spidey sense it'll be Steen who'll win it. Jurgens, I just don't think is strong enough. I think he's more of a center. And then with Driscoll, he's another guy who's probably better at right tackle. I know Stout loves him and he could play a bunch of positions, even left in a pinch, but this Steen kid is interesting. Now, one other source told us it was a little rich for them, his team, to go in the third round, because he's got to learn how to play the guard position, and you'd rather get the guy around later. And, look, beauty's in the eye of the beholder. I understand that. But in Stout, we trust. If he thinks he can do it, he can do it.
Yeah, a scouting source put it to me this way. He's fine with Steen. He thinks he's a good player. He said to me, he's just not my type of offensive lineman. I said, what do you mean by that? He says, I like my guys like mean, nasty, real physical. And, that just, he didn't feel like Tyler fit that bill, but I would say the Eagles have had guys flourish who didn't have that sort of quote unquote mean, nasty, demeanor. Certainly Isaac Seumalo was country strong, had great strong hands and everything, but I don't think anybody ever described him as sort of a mean, nasty mauler. He was a really good offensive lineman. But he did struggle early on in his career. We talk about that a lot, where he got benched after the Kansas City game, week 2 of his second year. And then really, the next year is when he sort of came into his own. So we'll see with Steen. And I just think when you have a second round pick, a third round pick, and a fourth round pick battling for your right guard spot, and you've got Pro Bowlers at every other spot, you're doing pretty good there as far as stockpiling talent. Exactly. Yeah. All right. The next pick, as someone who knows Sidney Brown well told me, Philly is going to love this guy. Red Star guy, as Howie Roseman explained, as far as, just human being, character, personality. And it doesn't mean just he's a good guy. They also think that translates onto the field. Like when you get a guy, he's a gamer. You know what I'm saying? Like a guy who's going to give you 100% effort, and he's very instinctive. So this is, look, I mean, I've been calling for the Eagles to address safety position on, before day 3 for a while. And I think this, who knows if it's going to be a good pick or not, but it has the makings of what feels like a pretty good decision.
A couple things here is another source tells us he's the kind of guy you want in a street fight. Tough as hell.
Yep.
Commands respect. From a football playing on the field standpoint, can match tight ends, but he's not a nickel, better close to the ball, but functional on the hash.
Right.
Instinctive, knows where to go, has a nose for the football. He's not C.J. Gardner-Johnson. Don't mistake me for that. The kid, is it Jartavius Martin? I think that's what his name was, from Illinois.
The other safety, yeah.
Yes, he's a better football player because he's got better ball skills. He's also he could play on the outside. That kid that went to Washington, I think. That's why he went in the second round to Washington, because he could play nickel, he could play inside, he could play outside. He's a better football player, but that's not a knock on Sidney Brown. It's just Brown does other stuff. Brown doesn't play like him, but this kid's a really good football player. If he doesn't start, I'd be very surprised, Sidney Brown.
Oh, I would think so. Because we really, Justin Evans has to stay healthy and prove himself, even though he did have a pretty good year last year, right? With the Saints, Justin Evans.
We showed he's healthy and he had to play some nickel last year because they ran out of players. They had a bunch of guys hurt. But yeah, to me, Brown's got to come in here and start. I know he's a third rounder. That's not usually expected, but he's so talented and he's like apparently really smart and instinctive. He should be able to pick this up. Yeah, and this is some teams, including the Eagles, had a 2 on him, so this is a pretty good value.
Awesome. All right. He's one of the guys that I'm going to be really excited about seeing because of how much, how annoying I get about safety with this team. So hopefully they hit on it. And then obviously, as we go into round 4, Adam, it's another position the Eagles needed to address. You could have been, you would like a little higher, but apparently they think that he probably should have gone higher, and that's yet another Georgia Bulldog, the cornerback Kelly. Is it Kelly?
Yeah, I
Keely?
don't know if it's Keely or Kelly. That's a great question.
Keely Ringo.
Yeah, yeah.
Ringo. What do you
So
know about him?
the Eagles had a higher grade than he went. Now, I would tell you from our sources, not everyone in the league is a fan of his tape. Some lower body stiffness. Yes, he's long, which you love. Comes from a great program. Obviously, he's won a lot of games. Nice. See, the nice thing here, and this goes to your point, is it a future need 100%? There's no doubt about it. The hope here is that Greedy Williams stays healthy, and Williams is your third outside corner. And then year 2, they get Ringo in the rotation, give Slayer Bradbury a breather occasionally. And remember, Greedy Williams is on a 1-year deal.
Right.
So, and then Ringo's your starter in year 3. Now, typically, 4th-round picks are not expected to start. They're considered high-end backups. The potential to be a starter if all works out before the end of the rookie contract, and that's kind of where they're at with him. He clearly has better talent than 4th round, but the tape shows some stiffness, and you worry about that with guys who are longer because it sometimes you can't flip your hips as much.
Yes,
and that's a concern. But again, there's a reason why he dropped to the 4th, but the Eagles had a higher grade than that. And here's your future outside corner. This is either this year or next year. They had to get that guy. And again, they think highly of him more than some teams, so we'll see.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned future outside corner because at 6'2", what he's about 207, I think, is what he measured in at. I know some people were asking us on social media or in comment boxes, could he also be envisioned as a safety or some other position? But as far as I'm told, he's a cornerback. Yeah, they don't have any plans of trying to audition him in other spots. He's an outside corner.
Not only that, his now this does matter. Long speed matters. Wow, 6'1 3/4, 207. He ran a 4.36.
Well, I remember we talked to Greg. Yeah, Greg about him, right? Didn't he? Wasn't he one of the highest recruited players coming out of high school? Wasn't he on that list of the elite of the elite?
Oh, in 2020 might have been. And by the way, his 10-yard split at 1.54 is really good as well. It's not as quick as you would think when you ran a 4.36 because there's some players who actually beat that to run a little slower, but at 1.54 is solid. His vert was 33.5. Broad jump was 10.2, which could have been a little better, but it's one thing. Who cares?
Right.
The kid's tape is intriguing, but you're worried about the lower body stiffness, and that was brought up to me repeatedly on talking to teams about him.
There you go. He's from Scottsdale, Arizona, and he was a 5-star recruit coming out of high school and considered one of the best, most stud recruits coming out of Arizona in quite a while. He was number 7 overall player, and the number 1 cornerback and number 1 recruit in the state of Arizona. So he definitely came out when it came to Georgia with a lot of hype to the name. All right, let's move on to their next picks. We're in the 6th and 7th round. Before we do that, I want to remind you to check out our friends at phlsportsnation.com, enhancing the fans' experience with their coverage of all Philadelphia sports teams. For the fan, by the fan is their motto, so make sure you check them out at phlsportsnation.com or on Twitter at phlsportsnation. Let's pause and hear from our other friends at Sky Motor Cars.
Sky Motor Cars in Westchester is a different sort of dealership. All it takes is one look at their Highline pre-owned vehicles that people over the country want and need. Owner Brett Schulter, make sure you don't spend a dime of your money before you purchase the car. Sky Motor Cars allows you to make all the decisions regarding your next vehicle. At Sky Motor Cars, you never have to spend more than necessary. Visit SkyMotorCars.com today or call 610-918-7225.
And if you hop into Sky Motor Cars in Westchester, PA, make sure you tell them Adam and Geoff sent you. You will get a great deal. So I know the next pick kind of confused some people. Not me. I don't think you either. But they take the quarterback from Stanford, Tanner McKee, who is, your conventional pocket quarterback, does not have a whole lot of movement skills, is not a guy who's going to, come in and do zone reads and things like that and keep the ball, right? So that confused people because they think the Eagles should want to run the same offense with the same quarterback. But the Eagles have pretty much said time and again, Adam, how they feel about, in general, just having quality backups, trying to draft one every year. And they had Gardner Minshew. He's also not a guy that you're going to run a whole lot on design runs. And he was their top backup until he signed with the Colts. So this is just the Eagles being the Eagles, trying to get good quarterback prospects on day 3 and hope it works. I don't think you worry as much about, does it, can I run with him, or does he fit the exact offense that I'm running at that point?
Yeah, but I agree with those people that it's he. Let me just give you, this is strictly this is straight from me to someone else. I asked the question, tall kid, could he move? And this is from an NFL quarterbacks coach. He's a statue. He can't move. He's a decent processor, smart guy, obviously. Good kid, good arm. But because you've got 2 quarterbacks, your starter and your backup who are runners, and this kid is not.
Right.
So I get the point of people are like, well, I don't get it. It doesn't fit. And also Ian Book could run too. It doesn't really fit. But as you said, it's a great point. When you get in the 6th round, you're just looking for good prospects. This kid is good.
Yes.
In terms of Tanner McKee from Stanford, he's the kind of guy, because he could spin it. Now the guy they really like, from what we understand, went earlier, Dorian Thompson Robinson out of UCLA, could run. Went to Cleveland in the 5th round. So he could have been an Eagle had he dropped to him. But this kid has got talent. He could throw the football. Why not? It's kind of Joe Banner said. Remember when Joe came on our show a couple years ago and said, he's explaining like what you do in the later rounds. He goes, a lot of them are dart throws. You're just, because the percentage is so low that they're going to make it.
Right.
Tom Brady, 6 rounds. But no, but that's what you're doing. You're taking guys with traits. Guy could spin it. He's big.
Yeah, 6'6", 230. I mean, yeah, definitely big.
Sure.
There was one more point I wanted to make on that. What was it? Well, I mean, he'll compete with Ian Book, obviously, to try to be the number 3 quarterback, developmental quarterback. But the point I wanted to make is that the Eagles definitely abide by this philosophy. They try to draft quarterbacks and bring in quarterbacks, but I will say it has not. The late round quarterback has not worked for them real well. I mean, it's a throw of the dart, so it's not like I'm blasting him for it, but it didn't work out well with Clayton Thorson. I mean, he was really bad. Clayton Thorson was bad. That didn't work out well at all.
No,
there was another. Go ahead.
He spurned the Eagles. That's so funny. Went to Dallas, and Doug was like, threw his hands up, like, "Oh, he signed with Dallas. We wanted him back." Right.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, but wasn't there another quarterback that they drafted on day 3 in the last 3 or 4 years that didn't pan out for them? I don't know why I can't think of the name.
Andy Hall.
No, it used to pan out for them, right? Back in the day, they were pretty good at it in the early days of Andy. But AJ
quarterback factory.
Yeah, quarterback factory. Right. Oh man. So, what was Kafka? He was a 5th or a 4th?
4th or 5th, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, if he didn't break his wrist or he had wrist surgery.
Yep.
Because remember, I think, he was. Am I mistaken? Was he not competing for the starting job after Kevin Cobb left?
No. He wasn't competing for the starting job because they had
back up to number 2.
They had Michael Vick. He was competing. He eventually got beat out by Nick Foles and who's the kid from Trent Edwards, right?
Trent Edwards, but what happened is Mike hurt his wrist and definitely was pushing for rush spot or not to start. Why would I?
That's what I'm saying. He hurt his wrist,
3.
and that allowed Trent Edwards to get a lot of time. And Trent Edwards had he had such a bad OTA that I actually thought he was going to get cut before training camp, right?
You remember what happened? Mr. Fourth Quarter? Preseason game, and people are like, oh my God, he's unbelievable.
I know, but he really did have a good preseason. So when it came down to it, and like you said, Kafka had hurt his wrist, and they just went with, you knew Nick Foles was going to make it because he was a 3rd round pick. So they wound up keeping, those 2 quarterbacks behind Vic, and that was it for Mike Kafka.
Yeah, Kafka actually did as well. If I recall correctly, he did so well that not only would he make the team, they thought he could actually replace Nick as the backup, the number 2 for the future. And then he got hurt, and that was really it for his career. And he's become a pretty good coach.
Yeah, he has been. Now he's the Giants offensive coordinator. All right, last guy is an interesting cat. He's a defensive end from Texas, although his size is interesting. He's 6'3", 292 pounds, Moro Ojomo, sort of a guy that I think will have to find his way at either tackle or end. He's sort of got that tweener body type.
Yeah, he'll he's definitely, because they were on an odd front. He'll work. He'll be able to work in this front. I mean, they have an opening for maybe one more guy to push for a roster spot. This is it's a kid I thought would actually go a little bit higher. I'm not sure, but he's got decent measurables. And when you're in the 7th round, you're looking for traits and guys just to bring to training camp and see what happens.
Yeah. I know I spoke to one scouting source who I think had, met with him at one point. He said he's got an interesting personality. He didn't say he was a bad kid. He just said he was an interesting personality and that it'll be a good, it'll be, the way he described it, it'll be an eye-opening experience for him to be around veterans like Fletcher Cox and Brandon Graham. And he's either, going to get with the program pretty quickly, or he's going to realize he has to get with the program because these guys are veterans and they know what they're doing. So but look, this is the Eagles' philosophy. You just keep adding to the trenches, right? And maybe you get some surprise out of him.
He analytically, he did really well.
Mm-hmm.
His 10-yard split was 177, under 1.8 for a guy. It was 292, also 34.5-inch arms. This is his wingspan is 83 1/8, which is really long. 6'2" 5/8. Boy, he's got long arms for a guy who's only 6'2" 5/8.
Yep.
Well, this is an analytic data point guy.
And that makes sense, right? Because we did say that when you get into day 3 with the Eagles and they start just trying to find diamonds in the rough, they go by analytics a lot. They go the measurables, the testing. They'll take some characteristics too on day 3, like they've done in the past. And then, of course, the quarterbacks they always look for as well. So everything kind of fits the mold. Ringo tested well. This defensive end, I'm going to have to struggle with his name. Jomo tested well, and the other kid's a quarterback, so it all makes sense.
Moro Ojomo, yes. So
Moro Ojomo.
Yeah, so you bring him to camp, and look, on paper, it's this could be a home run class. I mean, obviously, making sure Jalen Carter does everything he should do. The ones that you expect, though, for sure to work out are Nolan Smith, Sidney Brown. Ringo is a projection down the line, but 2 starters at a minimum. Now, I say starters. They got to figure out how they're going to use Nolan Smith. We'll learn more in OTAs. And then Steen, you would think over time, if he doesn't start this year, will start in the future. So maybe 3 starters out of this class. You get 3 starters out of the class, you're feeling pretty darn good.
Yeah, I would think, again, you never can predict the future, but even if Tyler Steen winds up being a high-end backup, I mean, that's not the worst thing in the world. I mean, he played in the NFL. He gives the Eagles depth. If somebody else winds up being a better guard, so be it. But I do think ideally they would like him to start. But yeah, we'll see. I agree with you on all of that. All right, that will wrap that part up. So we already talked about what the Eagles really need now, and linebacker is, there's no doubt they still have to
one more guy
inside,
one more ILB. Yeah,
I would say one more guy at LB. I don't know. Now we defensive end, maybe not so much though, right? I mean,
based on what we had heard, they think Barnett's going to contribute this year.
Okay.
So that, again, it just for this year now, because right now it's all about this year, now that we've had the draft. It's just remaining needs. They need one more inside linebacker. I totally agree with you. But again, they don't have – ideally, you want this done by training camp. Bring one more guy in, a veteran for competition. Clubs now have all the leverage because you're past the draft. You're looking at 1-year veteran minimum deals, essentially. And then the end – it just depends what Barnett looks like, because you got Sweat, Graham, Barnett. Teron Jackson you can't really depend on. Again, Janoris Rahman, who we mentioned, Matt Leo, sorry, that he's technically on the team, but he's never done anything.
Been on the team longer than half the guys on the team.
Crazy, yeah. 2020. This will be his fourth year. Jeez. You're right. They could use one more guy, but do they have to? No, because they're going to be a multiple, as we're told. They're going to be definitely multiple again. And then we're going to learn a lot more about Sean Desai as we go along here, about what he prefers. We learned a lot last summer with Gannon, that they were going to be way more matchup heavy, matchup zone heavy, because he had corners who can do it. He couldn't do as much mirror match coverage in year 1 because he didn't have – Steven Nelson did not give him that opportunity because he just didn't run well enough. And now that they have guys who could do it, and who knows with Ringo, well, you don't want to put any pressure on him. Again, he's only a 4th-round pick. It's more about the future, obviously, with him. But, look, the kid could run, and he's long. You never know what happens in training camp in terms of matchups. Maybe he gets on the field for 10 or 15 plays a game. Who knows?
There you go. And as we mentioned earlier, next year, you're talking about maybe as many as 10 picks, right? They've got their first, second, sixth. They've got some comp picks left to get. At least probably a third rounder for losing Hargrave. I mean, I would have to think so. Got the Saints second round pick, the Bucks fifth, and the Vikings fifth from the Rager trade. So they are, it's going to be another fun March and April next year too.
Howie, I wonder if Howie flips houses, because Howie will be flipping these picks for. If they pick more than 7 now, again, we're going to have this. We're going to have if we can't get a casino to do it, we'll have our own we'll get someone to sponsor it. We'll get Josh on it.
Right.
Because, if they wind up having folks, remind us of this, please, next year. If they wind up having 10 picks heading into the draft, and we'll put the odds, for picking 8, picking 7 of them, they'll probably only wind up, because remember, a bunch of these 4 comp picks, then the future pick, or the trades, as you said, the picks they're getting from former trades or previous trades. But how many of their own picks will they actually make? Right now, I think they only have 3, which is absurd. Yeah, first, second, and sixth. How about that?
Yep. Incredible. They'll probably be trading for a number 1 corner at this time next year.
No, you don't want that. They better not be.
Why?
Well, you said trading for a number 1 corner?
Well, I mean, it could very possibly be the last year for no, because Slay has 2 years now.
Yeah,
right?
So remember, Bradbury and Slayer.
Yeah, it's a good point. Good point. Yeah, maybe a defensive end. Who knows? We'll see.
Maybe.
All right, that's going to do it for this episode of the. I almost said the intel. This episode of, because we did give a lot of intel today. But that will do it for this episode of Inside the Birds. Next time we'll be with you on Thursday, and of course, remember to look out for the intel with Greg Cosell on Wednesday morning, and keep reading InsideTheBirds.com, as we are constantly refreshing the website with new stories from Andrew DeCecco, Benjamin Paul, our intern, and of course Sam Finkel with the analytics. So that'll do it. As always, we thank you for flying with us inside the birds.